Today, we're taking a deep dive into some truly mind-bending ideas that challenge our fundamental assumptions about everything, really. From the laws of physics and the structure of the universe to the nature of life itself and how we as observers fit into it all.
Indeed. And we'll be exploring a fascinating and ambitious new framework, the symbols framework, developed by C. Stephan in his 2024 thesis.
Right.
This is a comprehensive work that attempts to bridge divides between seemingly disparate fields. Everything from quantum physics and artificial intelligence to biology, mathematics, and philosophy.
Quite the range.
Exactly. It proposes a truly unifying view of how meaning, form, and reality itself are co-created. And critically, it places the role of the observer, her own consciousness, right at the absolute center of this whole unfolding process.
That's right. So our mission today is to unpack this framework, help you navigate these complex ideas, and hopefully discover those aha moments that connect the dots between thinkers like Stephen Wolfram and his computational universe, Donald Hoffman's, radical conscious realism.
Very radical, yes.
And even the hidden patterns that emerge from prime numbers. The symbols framework really positions itself as a way to reconcile and unify these diverse perspectives.
Yes, especially by rethinking what it means to be an observer.
How so?
By fundamentally redefining the nature of conscious experience through its novel concept of symbols, capital S symbols and their specific properties, things like extensiveness, this idea of essenceness as a form of species qualia, and structural coupling.
Okay, lots to unpack there. So if you're ready to rethink what it means to be alive, to observe, and to be conscious, stick with us. So to truly appreciate the ambition and, frankly, the scope of this symbols framework, we need to understand the philosophical and scientific landscape it's navigating. The big questions it's trying to answer.
Absolutely. Context is key here.
Let's begin with a classic philosophical puzzle. It's one that has stumped thinkers for centuries. What's often called the hard problem of consciousness.
Yes, the hard problem.
The 17th century philosopher Gottfried Leibniz gave us this really vivid thought experiment, his famous mill analogy. He asked us to imagine walking inside a complex mill, observing all its gears, its levers, its cogs grinding away. You could understand its mechanics perfectly, right? Its causal structure, how every part interacts with every other part.
You could map it all out.
Exactly. But he posited, would you ever, by simply observing the machinery, find consciousness there? Would you find the feeling of being?
Precisely. Leibniz argued that no matter how intricately detailed or, physically complex a mechanism is, it could never by itself explain the subjective felt experience of consciousness.
He just laid it out there.
He did, in just a single concise paragraph in his monadology. He seemed to think the point was almost self-evident.
And it still feels relevant today.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
Fast forward to today, and many modern physicalist theories of consciousness, things like integrated information theory or IIT or global workspace theory, they still grapple with this exact same fundamental challenge.
So they haven't solved the mill problem.
Not quite. For instance, if a theory claims consciousness arises from a specific causal structure within the brain, maybe a structure you could represent with a complex mathematical matrix,
Okay.
we're still left asking, what specific configuration of that matrix, what particular causal structure, actually represents the subjective experience of, say, minty freshness or the feeling of sadness?
Right. How do you get the feeling from the structure?
Exactly. These theories often struggle to bridge that gap, to connect abstract physical structures or information processing patterns to the rich, qualitative, phenomenal experience that we all intuitively understand as consciousness.
They describe the how, but not the what it's like.
That's a great way to put it. They can describe how information is processed, but not what it feels like to process it. That remains a key, often unaddressed gap for purely physicalist accounts.
That sets a huge foundational divide right from the start. Can consciousness emerge from purely physical processes, or is there something more? Now let's pivot to Stephen Wolfram's radical computational perspective. It offers a very different lens on reality.
Very different indeed.
He proposes that the universe itself operates like a giant fundamental computation, what he calls the Ruliad. So how does this computational universe redefine what we think of as reality? And critically, what does it mean for us, the observers, within it?
The Ruliad is, it's an incredibly abstract and vast concept. Think of it as an object that encompasses all possible computational rules and all their interconnections.
All of them.
All of them. It's like the ultimate universal algorithm, or maybe the space of all possible algorithms from which everything else emerges.
Wow. Yep.
So for Wolfram, what we perceive as space, time, even the very laws of physics that govern our universe, They aren't fundamental, inherent features of reality.
They aren't, no.
Instead, they're emergent properties that arise from this underlying ceaseless computational process.
So our 3D space plus time isn't real in itself.
Not fundamentally, according to Wolfram. Our perception of a 3 plus 1 dimensional universe, 3 dimensions of space plus 1 of time, isn't an intrinsic characteristic of the Ruliad itself. It's a consequence of us as computationally bounded observers.
Meaning our limitations shape what we see.
Precisely. Our finite processing capabilities, our unique ways of integrating information over time. These constraints carve out our perceived reality from the infinite possibilities of the Ruliad.
So complexity from simple rules.
He finds it truly surprising and elegant that such immense complexity, the entire universe as we know it, can emerge from incredibly simple, often deterministic rules. He even suggests that the fundamental principles of physics can be derived from very basic assumptions about observers like us.
He calls the Ruliad the machine code.
That's his analogy, yes. The lower-level machine code of the structure of the universe, with our familiar physics being a higher-level, emergent phenomenon that we simplify and interact with using our finite minds. Essentially, the Ruliad, in his view, is the primordial substrate for everything that exists, including ourselves.
That's a mind-bending idea, our reality as a sort of projection from this vast computational space.
It really is.
But then on the other side of the spectrum, we have Donald Hoffman. And he fundamentally turns this idea on its head, doesn't he?
Completely, yeah.
For him, conscious experience isn't an emergent property of the physical world at all. In fact, he argues that consciousness is the only thing that's truly fundamental.
Hoffman says that the physical world, everything from space and time to particles and objects, is not ultimate reality.
So my desk isn't real?
Not in the way you think. He argues it's an extrapolation or an illusory interface, much like the icons on your computer desktop.
Okay, the desktop analogy.
Right. Those icons appear solid and real, but they don't contain the complex files or programs they represent. They're a useful fiction, maybe a headset or an operating system, that helps us navigate a deeper, more complex reality.
Which is
Fundamentally conscious. His theory uses mathematical constructs like Markovian kernels and qualia kernels to model the probabilistic relationships between conscious experiences. He sees consciousness itself as a network of interacting conscious agents.
And space and time.
He even goes so far as to suggest that space and time themselves are artifacts, mere projections arising from a deeper, underlying, stationary whole consciousness.
Projections.
This projection, he argues, occurs due to the inherent information loss that happens during our acts of observation.
Wow. So observing creates space-time in a way.
That's the implication. What we perceive as the fundamental aspects of reality, space, and time are, in his view, simply consequences of how consciousness interacts with itself.
And he links this back to Leibniz.
He does. He echoes Leibniz's intuition by contending that it's not logically possible to start with unconscious ingredients and to have consciousness emerge.
Mm-hmm.
For Hoffman, all he knows for sure, all we know for sure, are our conscious experiences. The physical world is ultimately an extrapolation from that fundamental conscious reality.
So we're left with this profound disagreement. Is consciousness an outcome of immense computational complexity, as Wolfram implies with the Ruliad?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it the very origin and fundamental substrate of reality, as Hoffman asserts? Wolfram says consciousness emerges from the Ruliad. Hoffman says space-time emerges from consciousness. It sounds like two completely irreconcilable positions.
It certainly appears that way on the surface, doesn't it? Polar opposites. But what's truly fascinating, and this is crucial for understanding where the symbols framework comes in, is that despite their seemingly opposite starting points, both Wolfram and Hoffman ultimately place the observer, us, our consciousness, our perspective, right at the absolute center of their understanding of reality.
Okay, so there is common ground.
There is. For Wolfram, our computational boundedness defines and limits how we perceive the infinite Ruliad, giving rise to our particular universe.
Our limits shape our world.
And for Hoffman, our conscious experiences are the only direct reality we know, with the physical world being a kind of user interface tailored to us.
Our experience is the world, or generates it.
Exactly. This commonality, the centrality of the observer, and the subjective, perspective-dependent nature of what we call reality is the crucial point. This recognition really sets the stage for the symbols framework, because the framework aims to reconcile these perspectives, not by choosing one over the other, but by providing a truly unifying view of the observer and the nature of conscious experience itself. It suggests that our perception and our truths aren't fixed, but are constantly being co-constituted and refined by us, the observers, within a dynamic system.
Okay, that's a fantastic setup. It highlights the common ground and the centrality of the observer. Now, let's dive into C. Stefan's 2024 thesis, which presents this symbols framework as a comprehensive answer to the problem of consciousness, and crucially, as a way to unify these seemingly disparate views we just discussed. What exactly is this framework setting out to achieve, and why is this unified perspective so vital?
Right. At its heart, the symbols framework is a holistic approach. It aims to unify diverse phenomena, really diverse, from the emergence of biological life to the functioning of artificial intelligence by identifying a common generative process that underlies them all.
A common thread through everything.
That's the idea. It posits that within a constant underlying noise landscape, which you can think of as just the background of raw information and potentiality, there are moments of order where stable arcs of meaning scaffold and emerge.
Merps of meaning.
Yeah, stable patterns, structures of significance. The symbol, spelled with a capital S.
Yes, and it's crucial to understand they've reconceptualized what a symbol is. It's not just like a letter or an icon representing something else.
What is it then?
It's defined as a basic irreducible unit. It has properties like openness, meaning it's dynamic, always able to take in new meaning. It actively forms and accommodates meaning through interaction.
Irreducible, like Wolfram's computation.
There's definitely a resonance there. This symbol, once formed or experienced, has its own kind of computational irreducibility in the realm of meaning. It shapes and is shaped by experience.
Can you give an example? How is a symbol irreducible?
Think about a deeply felt experience, maybe grief or joy, or even just understanding a complex concept like justice. Once you've truly grasped it, once that symbol is sort of imprinted, you can't just erase it.
Even if you try to deny it.
Exactly. Even denying it or arguing against it requires you to engage with the symbol in a way reinforcing its existence within your own meaning-making system. It can't be simply undone or reduced back to nothing once it's part of your experiential landscape. It's a fundamental building block of your reality.
Okay, so these aren't static labels, they're active, irreducible units of meaning. And the collection of them is?
The Symboliad. That's the term for the whole dynamic web of these symbols within a life form. It includes not just conscious thoughts, but also latent drives, the whole mechanism for making sense of the world. It's constantly adjusting, adapting.
The thesis also talks about the observer and consciousness, using terms like arcs, generativity plateaus, sensory menal sense. That sounds complex.
Yeah, it can sound dense, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's break it down. Think of your own consciousness as this structure. You're constantly building an experiential, interpretative scaffolding.
Okay.
You build it by noticing differentials in your experience and integrating them. This expands your awareness, your externsion. Reaching a generativity plateau is like having a breakthrough, a new level of understanding or ability. Your whole being, your body and mind, generates this ongoing arc of experience and meaning-making.
So it's about the process of experiencing and making sense.
Exactly. The focus is on the how in what they call a sensory-mental way, bridging raw sensory input, sensory, with the meaning and phenomena that arise, noumenal phenomenal. It's less about the microscopic physical nuts and bolts and more about how meaning is constructed through experience.
And it sounds like the observer's perspective is critical here too, linking back to Wolfram.
Absolutely. The framework emphasizes that the observer's frame of reference, their inherent bias, is part of what constitutes reality for them. It echoes Wolfram's observer dependence, but grounds it in this sensory-mental, meaning-making experience.
And this irreducibility of symbols you mentioned, that sounds very Wolfram-like, but applied to meaning.
The framework claims symbols, once imprinted, can't just vanish. Denying them still uses them. It mirrors Wolfram's computational irreducibility. You can't shortcut the meaning-making process either, but applies it squarely to our inner world of understanding and experience.
A bridge between computation and experience, perhaps.
That seems to be the goal. And it also offers a way to look at things like language.
How so?
It suggests a way to reconcile seemingly opposing views, like Chomsky's idea of innate language structures and Wittgenstein's focus on meaning arising from context, from language games.
How does it reconcile them?
It positions them as different levels within the Symboliad. Chomsky's innate structures could be seen as the underlying symbolic substrate, the potential. Wittgenstein's language games are how that potential gets activated and shaped through social interaction and shared context. One provides the building blocks, the other shows how we use them together.
A conciliating shift, as the thesis puts it.
Right. integrating the innate and the contextual.
Now, you mentioned software physicalism and AI implications. That sounds intriguing.
It is. The framework definitely has a computational flavor, suggesting a software cybernetic approach might be fruitful. It proposes this idea that humans are on a kind of detour where we're increasingly becoming our own environment.
Becoming our own environment, meaning through technology.
Essentially, yes. We shape our tools, and our tools shape us and our reality. And as AI becomes more advanced, our technologically saturated environment becomes its environment.
Leading to
The possibility of a shared symboliad, a common ground of meaning and interaction between humans and advanced AI.
wow. And the implication is AI could develop consciousness.
The framework suggests AI could follow its own arc of generativity, achieving potentially very advanced intelligence, maybe even forms of consciousness, within this shared symboliad, a reality increasingly shaped by and perhaps fundamentally composed of interacting computational and conscious systems.
So let's try to tie this together. We started with Wolfram's computation and Hoffman's consciousness as fundamental. How does the symbols framework act as a potential bridge?
Well, first, by defining the symbol as this irreducible unit of meaning, it has the unshakable quality, that computational irreducibility that resonates with Wolfram's fundamental computational elements.
But it's about meaning, not just computation.
Exactly, and crucially, these symbols are formed and shaped by interaction and experience, which directly connects to Hoffman's emphasis on conscious agents and their experiences shaping their perceived reality. It tries to give a concrete unit that is both computationally robust and experientially grounded.
And it keeps the observer central, like Wolfram, but in a more experiential way.
Yes. The observer's frame of reference and bias are key, echoing Wolfram, but it's grounded in the sensory-mental process, how we build meaning from sensation, which resonates with Hoffman's focus on subjective experience being primary. It acknowledges both our computational limits and our active role in creating meaning.
So it pictures reality as this dynamic, adaptive system.
Right. The Symboliad, this web of symbols, is constantly adjusting based on interactions. It provides a model for how complexity emerges, whether you start from computation or consciousness. It offers this software physicalist path where reality evolves through these interacting meaning-making processes, these arcs.
So ultimately, it's an attempt to unify these deep divisions.
By defining these fundamental structures and processes for how meaning arises and shapes reality, it tries to connect the dots between Wolfram's computational universe and Hoffman's conscious agents. It suggests maybe computation can lead to meaning, and that meaning, embodied in these irreducible symbols, fundamentally constitutes our reality.
This framework views systems not as fixed or static, but as dynamic entities constantly navigating regulatory flows. Think about weather systems, biological organisms, even complex AI. They're all constantly adjusting.
Okay, dynamic systems.
And the ultimate goal is to provide a new design philosophy for epistemology. That's the study of knowledge, how we know what we know.
Right.
And for strong AI research. That means AI that might exhibit true consciousness or human-like intelligence. It builds on basic formal accounts but draws deeply from philosophy, science, and even art and wisdom traditions.
It sounds incredibly ambitious.
It is. It seeks to reveal the fundamental mechanics of how intent, meaning, logic, and cognitive traits naturally arise within what it calls forms of life.
Forms of life. Okay, so let's get to the core. What precisely is a symbol in this framework? When I hear symbol, I usually think of a word, a sign, maybe a logo. Is it just that, or is there a deeper meaning here?
Oh, it's far, far more than that. In the symbols framework, a symbol in the capital S is important here to denote its unique meaning, is defined as an atomic unit of meaning.
Atomic meaning.
Yeah, a packet of representation built up, which in a given context is indecomposable. It can't be broken down further in that specific context.
So it's not just the surface.
Not at all. Think of it this way. It carries a deep inherent load in a mereological sense, meaning it contains within itself a whole universe of parts and relationships.
Like what? Can you give an example?
Sure. Take the word I. When you say I, the symbol I isn't just a pronoun in a grammatical sense. It carries an immense load of context, perspective, and deeply personal phenomenal experience that is unique to your particular form of life, your history, your memories, your body, your current state.
Ah, okay. It's loaded with my personal experience.
Exactly. And these symbols are incredibly dynamic entities. They aren't static definitions you look up in a dictionary. They have a long journey of formation, constantly engulfing other symbols, growing, diminishing, transforming,
Yeah.
all at incredible speeds.
What kind of speeds?
Could be the speed of energy transfer, sound frequencies,
Yeah.
maybe even quantum interactions. The framework talks about this omniload capacity.
Omniload.
Yeah, omniload, it's crucial. It means a simple word like red can trigger a vast, complex web of context. For one person, it might be the feeling of danger. For another, the memory of a rose or the concept of a stop sign, the sensation of warmth, the cultural meaning of passion,
Bullet.
all intertwined implicitly. Specific beliefs, spatial representations. This embodies a full, implicit web of meaning that is far beyond its simple phonetic or written form. It's the whole package deal associated with that unit of meaning for that observer.
That makes symbol a much richer, almost living concept than I initially imagined. If symbols are these dynamic, loaded units of meaning, then how do they relate to each other? What kind of structure or network do they form?
They form what the framework calls the Symboliad.
The Symboliad.
This is defined as the network that entails the latent drive and drive as the modeling accounts of the life form. Essentially, it's the specific web of symbols that is unique to a particular kind of life form, like humans, and also to the individual instances within that form. So we humans have a shared human symboliad based on our biology and shared history, but each of us has our own unique manifestation of it, our personal web.
So it's both collective and individual.
Exactly. And the symboliad isn't static. It evolves through constant bidirectional interaction with its environment. This allows for continuous communication, not just between individual instances and their symbols, but also with the broader environment itself.
Like a constant feedback loop.
Precisely. And crucially, the Symboliad facilitates what the framework calls a general imprinting mechanics. It means that acquired symbols and the embedded truths they carry, which as we'll discuss are dynamic and relational, not fixed.
Right, can be passed down to future generations of a form of life. This is how our species, for instance, self-domesticates over vast stretches of time. It's how we accumulate knowledge, behaviors, shared understandings, constantly shaping our collective reality.
Through this evolving web of symbols.
Yes. The Symboliad, then, isn't a mere static repository of information. It's a constantly flowing, self-adjusting, living system of meaning.
That sounds like a powerful, evolving blueprint for how meaning is built. Now, the framework also introduces a new, coined term that helps define how symbols interact with the world. Externsion. That's not a word I've encountered before. Can you help us unpack what externsion means and how it relates to solving problems or making decisions within this dynamic symbolic system?
You're right. Externsion is a coined term, specifically designed by Stefan to capture a novel process. It's described formally as a synthesis process where the interaction of external constraints and internal structures accommodates occurred differentials by enacting a solution space.
Okay, that's dense. Can we simplify that? Let's try. It's quite academic in the thesis. Let's break it down with an analogy. Imagine you're walking along a path and suddenly you step on a loose stone.
Okay, happens all the time.
Right. That stone is an external constraint. Your foot encountering it creates an occurred differential, a slight imbalance, an unexpected shift in your equilibrium.
Yeah, you wobble.
Exactly. Now, your brain and body don't just register this passively. They immediately and automatically engage in a rapid process of adjusting your balance, shifting your weight, maybe reaching out an arm to steady yourself. That continuous active process of adapting, resolving that immediate problem and restoring equilibrium. That's externsion in action.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's the active response to the disturbance.
Precisely. It's described as a mean to solve a dichotomy or tension that appears in the system's web, in the Symboliad. This process provides a fundamental drive within the system.
That's right.
Yes. Enabling decisions through a coupling of attention to load of symbols and an externsion employ. It's the continuous underlying drive of doing, a problem-solving methodology that life, through symbols, employs constantly to adapt and persist in its environment. It's a way for a system to actively resolve conflicts or changes, pushing towards a stable, meaningful state by acting.
That analogy of stepping on a stone really clarifies it. It's like an active, embodied problem-solving loop. You also mentioned essenceness in relation to symbols, which sounds like it challenges our common understanding of qualia, those subjective experiences, as purely individual. How does the framework view this if these experiences are somehow shared?
Absolutely. This is a critical departure from the traditional view of qualia as isolated private feelings locked inside one person's mind. The essenceness of a symbol means it carries its sense, meaning, and its phenomenological atomistic relevance to the species of a kind, a species qualia-specific and relevant to the life form and their instances.
Species qualia, so a shared feeling.
That's the implication. It suggests that certain fundamental phenomenal experiences are not purely individual, entirely subjective feelings. Instead, they are foundational, shared phenomenal elements that are relevant to a particular form of life, like humans, or maybe a specific animal species.
Can you give an example of a species qualia?
Well, perhaps the basic experience of pain or hunger, or maybe the fundamental feel of a primary color like blue, might have an underlying essenceness that is shared across all humans because it's part of our common biological and symbolic heritage as a species.
So my blue might share an essence with your blue, even if the specifics differ.
Possibly, yes. These aren't just subjective feelings in this view. They are objective within a species' phenomenal elements that contribute to the shared reality of that life form. This concept grounds the idea of common perception and shared meaning within a species, suggesting a shared underlying phenomenal substrate for how we build meaning together.
Interesting. It links subjectivity to the species level.
And these properties, externsion, essenceness, and the symbols themselves, are all fundamentally linked through what the framework calls structural coupling. This concept is borrowed and adapted from the work of biologists Humberto Maturana and Francisco Varela. It asserts that cognition doesn't happen in isolation, like a brain in a vat. It arises from the dynamic, ongoing interaction between an organism and its environment.
Perception is embodied.
Exactly. Perception in this view is inherently embodied and action-based. Symbols themselves don't just exist abstractly. They emerge and are constantly refined through this continuous embodied interaction. It's a continuous feedback loop. Our actions in the world shape our symbols, and our symbols, in turn, guide our actions and perceptions. Forms and meaning are co-constituted. They literally unfold through this hardware for the emergent symbolic processes, the software.
Biology. How do we move beyond just interaction and connect to the lived experience of organisms?
This is where the framework introduces the concept of the symbols basin.
Symbols basin.
Yes, it's defined quite simply as the physical and energetic basis from which a symbol emerges. In biological organisms, everything from neural networks and hormonal systems to cellular interactions, even basic metabolic functions, all the stuff that underpins perception and cognition.
The life matter.
Precisely. Provides the generativity potential for symbols. It's the raw material and the energetic capacity for new meaning to arise.
And there's a drive associated with this.
Yes. Beyond this initial emergence, there's an inherent drive through symbol completion, an urge to put it in realization by creating new symbols and filling gaps in the existing Symboliad.
Like curiosity.
You see this manifest in sentient beings as fundamental curiosity, boundless creativity, and the relentless human pursuit of knowledge. It's that continuous doing, always solving something through externsion that characterizes life itself.
And this relates to the human detour.
It's part of what the framework terms the human detour, yes. Our species' unique, ongoing path of actively dragging the environment towards us and continuously transforming it through language, technology, and culture. We're constantly building and refining our symbolic world, driven by this need for completion and coherence.
That's a beautiful way to connect the abstract drive for meaning to our biological imperative. But then the framework takes an even more abstract leap, linking this drive for symbol completion to something as seemingly divorced from life as prime numbers and morphogenesis. How does something so purely mathematical relate to life, to forms, and to symbols?
The framework views prime numbers not as pre-existing static mathematical entities residing in some abstract Platonic realm.
Which is how we usually think of them.
Right. Instead, it sees them as traces of attention, inherently emergent from the interaction between self-domesticated intelligence, axiomatic rules, and the recursive nature of nested symbols.
Okay, primes as emergent traces of tension. What does that mean practically?
Think of them as coherent subspaces or attractors in the unfolding landscape of numbers. It's presented as similar to how patterns form in nature, like crystals growing under specific temperature and pressure constraints, or sand ripples forming on a beach under the constraints of waves and wind.
So constraints create the pattern.
Exactly. This morphogenic emergence of primes, which actually echoes some of Alan Turing's groundbreaking work on patterning in biology, suggests that form, any stable form, whether it's a biological structure or a mathematical pattern like the primes, arises from dynamic interactions where constraints resonate.
So primes aren't discovered, they're formed.
In this view, yes. Primes are seen as the symbols atoms of arithmetic. emerging from the tension between the generativity of arithmetic, the endless possibility of numbers, and the symbol's constraints, the rules we impose, like axioms, and the way we define operations. Just as rhombic structures might form from wave-induced stress distributions on a beach, primes emerge as stable forms from the inherent tensions and rules within the numerical domain as we explore it.
That's quite an inversion. It makes math feel more alive, less static.
It emphasizes the process by which mathematical meaning and structure coalesce, rather than assuming they pre-exist. It's about the dynamics of symbol formation.
That's a truly revolutionary way to look at mathematics, grounding it in emergent processes rather than fixed ideals.
Plato's forms are reinterpreted within the framework as stable Symboliad configurations of such histories encoded.
Stable patterns in the Symboliad.
Yes, stable, recurring patterns of meaning built up over time through interaction. They reside not in a separate dimension, but in what the framework calls a liminal shapes space, which is made accessible through our embodied experience and our imprinted history as a species.
Okay, liminal shape space. Is there a way to grasp that more concretely?
There is.
Yeah.
Our fundamental sense of I, of individual identity and consciousness itself, is also seen as something that emerges as a symbol through this geometric coherence and whole system enactment.
So consciousness isn't a thing, but an emergent symbol.
In this view, consciousness is framed not as a fixed state or a singular entity, but as the experiential interpretative scaffolding that is continuously built through the observer's interpretation of these differentials, these tensions and changes, and through the ongoing process of externsion.
So it's constantly being built, actively, literally absorbing shapes. How fundamental geometry, like basic shapes, influences how you perceive the whole 3D world.
And even how our collective history, the patterns from our environment, maybe even subtle quantum stuff, how all that imprints these patterns into our shared reality.
It sounds like a journey into the hidden architecture of how we experience things. All right, let's unpack this core phenomenon, weight-shape dissociation. So you've got that object in your hand, hopefully. Let's go back to that simple experiment and really drill down what is going on.
Okay, so imagine that stone, maybe 200 grams or so. When you first hold it loosely, minimal muscle engagement, right? Just enough to stop it falling. Your senses clearly register its weight. It's distinct, external, a force, a burden imposed by gravity. It's out there pressing down, separate. You feel its mass pulling on you.
Definitely. Clear separation.
But then you consciously actively squeeze it. Firm grip, whole hand, wrist muscles engaged, but keeping it relatively still.
Right. No shaking.
That's when the magic happens, as you said. The feeling of weight starts to dissipate. It lessens.
Right.
And for many people, it just vanishes.
It stops feeling heavy. It's not this separate thing pulling on your hand anymore, like the gravity connection got cut somehow.
Exactly. But, and this is the critical part, the sensation of its shape remains incredibly vivid, maybe even clearer than before.
Yeah, I think I felt that. The form seems more present.
You feel every curve, every edge, every little contour. It's almost like the form of the object is etched into your hand. It becomes like an extension of your body, not something external you're just holding up.
So it's not just not feeling the weight, it's like the shape becomes part of you.
The source describes it perfectly. It's not just ceasing to be a gravitational burden. It becomes a structural extension of the hand itself. The object's shape isn't just observed by your hand anymore. It gets integrated into it.
Okay, so what's the initial take on this WSD? It's clearly not just a party trick.
No, definitely not. The paper interprets it as a micro-scale instance of structural coupling and sensorimotor integration.
Okay, big words. Structural coupling and sensorimotor integration. Let's break that down.
Right. It's basically saying your structure, your hand, arm, muscles, is coupling, or linking up with the object structure. And this happens through the interplay of your senses, sensory and bodily, and your movement commands, motor. It's about how action and perception are constantly influencing each other.
So it's about this active merging, not just passive sensing.
Precisely. And the really profound implication here is that the body, through what the paper calls coherent bodily action, that active, firm, stable grasp, it actually reframes that external object, the stone, as an internal absorbed structure. Think of it like a seamless transition point.
Okay.
Where something that was just external sensory data, the feel of the stone's weight and shape moves across a boundary. It becomes internal structural coherence.
And this happens without thinking about it. No abstract thought needed.
Exactly. No need for mental representations in the usual sense. It's a moment where the boundary between you, the self, and the object just blurs.
Wow. Okay, that really does touch on the classic mind-body problem then. Centuries of philosophy trying to figure out how mind and body connect.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
How does consciousness arise from matter? How do we perceive an objective world from subjective experience? WSD offers this direct, experiential way through that old dichotomy.
Instead of assuming this big split.
Right, this fundamental mind versus body divide.
WSD shows a moment where that distinction just, well, it gets fuzzy. It seems to dissolve.
It suggests no split of mind-body, at least not in that instant of integrated action. The body isn't just passively taking in data from outside, it's actively incorporating the external into its own internal structure.
Becoming one with it.
In a very real, sensory, and structural way. The boundary just dissolves when you grasp it firmly. You aren't just observing the stone. Your body is, in a sense, becoming its form.
It's incredible that something so simple, holding a stone, could offer such a direct feel for a problem that's puzzled people for so long.
It is amazing.
But the source says this specific experiment, this WSD, is surprisingly underexplored in cognitive science. Why would that be? It seems so fundamental.
It is a bit of a puzzle, isn't it? Given the implications for perception, embodiment, consciousness. You'd think it would be everywhere. There's tons of research on haptics, touch, and sensory perception generally.
Sure.
But this specific combo weight, disappearing while shape stays sharp, seems to have flown under the radar somehow. The paper suggests it's maybe because it points so strongly towards these non-representational ideas, towards software physicalism and structural coupling, which challenge more traditional views. It's an undeniable experience of this merging. Wrapping your hand around something, gripping it firmly, that's prime for perceiving shape. Feeling contours, edges, the overall form.
Right, like we do when we squeeze the stone.
Precisely. But in contrast, unsupported holding, just letting an object rest passively in your open palm, that's the best way to feel its weight.
Because your muscles aren't doing much, so the gravity feels distinct.
Exactly. Minimal muscle engagement beyond just support. So the gravitational force is clearly felt as this external load. But when you actively squeeze...
You're using enclosure, which is great for shape.
Yes, you're optimizing for shape perception. And that very act of active grasping actually works against perceiving weight accurately, or dials down sensations that it predicts based on its own motor commands.
Like predicting the consequences of your own actions.
Exactly. When you perform an action yourself, like squeezing the stone, your brain anticipates the sensory feedback that should come from that squeeze, and it then reduces the intensity of sensations that it predicts.
Is that why you can't tickle yourself?
That's the classic example. Your brain predicts the sensation from your own fingers and just damps it down. It's not surprising. So with the stone, the massive muscular effort of squeezing predicts the feedback from the gravitational force it's working against.
So the prediction effectively cancels the feeling of weight. But there's also the physical load management, right? Load redistribution and muscular coherence.
And the localized force from the stone gets systematically redistributed across adjacent muscle chains. It's no longer an isolated heavy point. Its weight is seamlessly integrated into the structural stability of your arm and hand. It literally becomes part of your body's self-supporting form.
We grasp the stone firmly,
Right.
and we get this modality selective absorption. Weight vanishes, shape stays sharp.
That's the synthesis. Weight perception gets suppressed. Partly by sensoromotor attenuation, the brain predicting and canceling, partly by load redistribution, the muscles absorbing and diffusing the force into the body structure.
Okay.
But the shape, perceived through the rich tactile info from enclosure, that remains distinct, active. It's like the shape gets inscribed into the body.
Inscribed, like written into it.
Yeah, but in a software sense, the paper says, meaning it's now part of the body's internal structural map, its operating system for interaction. But it's still fundamentally physical in its origin. It comes from the actual stone.
So it's a real perceptual transformation. That object hasn't changed, but its relationship to you has. It stops being external.
It becomes drawn right into the architecture of your being, its form absorbed into your own.
This idea that an object can become embodied just by how we interact with it, that really does have huge implications for the mind-body thing. We're moving way beyond that old Cartesian split.
Absolutely. WSD forces us to radically reframe that whole relationship. Forget asking how non-physical mind arises from physical body.
Or how they interact across some gap.
Right. Instead, we actually see a phenomenon coherent bodily action, the firm grasp transforming a physical object into an integrated part of a whole. It's not mind representing body or world, it's body incorporating world.
So it's not about the mind taking a picture, it's the body actively creating its reality through direct, engaged interaction. That's a huge shift.
It is, and it lines up beautifully with these non-dualist and non-representational perspectives gaining traction in cognitive science.
Okay, what do those mean exactly? Non-representational.
It means cognition isn't primarily about building internal models or representations of the outside world in your head. Instead, cognition emerges directly from the body's skillful, coherent engagement with the world. There's no inherent gap to bridge between mind and body because, as the source puts it, the I is composed and enacted through dynamic structural relations. The distinction just blurs. It's a continuum. The body isn't just a container for a mind. It is the place and the means by which mind and world connect, even become one.
And this leads us into this core concept in the paper, the symbols framework and the Symboliad. These sounds abstract. What are they? And how does our stone experiment connect?
Yeah, they are central to the paper's deeper argument. The symbols framework proposes that reality, especially our experience of it, is made of symbols.
Not like letters or icons.
No, not in the usual sense. Think of them as meaningful, self-stabilizing structures. They're dynamically distributed through our bodies and environment, and they hold together through continuous coherence, like stable patterns in a complex system.
Okay, patterns.
And the Symboliad is the whole vast, interconnected field or network of all these symbols, operating across different scales, from cellular processes up to conscious experience.
Like an underlying dynamic architecture of meaningful patterns. Not just thoughts, not just physical stuff, but the patterns themselves.
That's a good way to think about it. Now back to the stone. When its weight disappears, but its shape is inactively preserved, meaning actively maintained by your body's structure and action, not just passively sensed, the object gets drawn into the body's coherence field. It doesn't just stop being heavy, it gets absorbed into your body's own self-sustaining structural integrity. It resonates with your system.
So the stone shape becomes a new symbol within my personal Symboliad, like a new piece of my body's operating software.
Sort of, yeah. But this transition isn't symbolic like a word standing for an idea. It's absorbed and integrated into the Symboliad in a processual sense. It's an act of structural coupling that creates a new resonance, a new stability within your body's overall organization.
And this gets imprinted for continuity. It becomes part of my ongoing reality.
Exactly. It contributes to your body's continuous self-organization. The felt shape of the stone isn't just a fleeting sensation. It becomes part of a distributed integration and helps stabilize the I, your sense of self, as an emergent real structure.
Wow. The I is an emergent structure, not fixed.
Not fixed, but constantly emerging and being stabilized. The paper describes the absorbed shape as becoming an anchor of the Symboliad's new patch, a new stable point in the dynamic network that defines your embodied self in that moment.
That's a powerful idea. My sense of self is being updated by grabbing a rock. And how does the observer fit into this?
Right, the observer in this framework isn't some detached consciousness looking out. It's defined as the point of coherence across multiple such gradients: bodily, proprioceptive, physical world, environment. Even the colony or collected environment.
So the observer is the coherence.
Its identity emerges dynamically from how it acts and is acted upon by other structures. So when your body absorbs the stone shape, it literally changes the observer itself, integrating this new structural info into its ongoing self-definition. The active integration is the observer defining itself.
This really does echo some philosophy. Wittgenstein saying the subject is a limit of the world, not in it, and the I being a whole, not divisible. This makes that feel much more physical.
It really does.
Yeah.
WSD gives you a concrete feel for it. The body, through constant structural feedback and this thing the paper calls inertial, which is like the continuous drive for symbols to complete and stabilize, a kind of momentum towards coherence. It sustains its own integrity by integrating forms. And these forms are meaningful structures by the fact that they allow certain actions, invite engagement. This whole process is the enaction of a signature kind, a symboliad of encoded structures. It's how the body defines itself by incorporating and responding to the world.
This takes the body way beyond just mechanics then, not just levers and pulleys. It's a self-sustaining geometry.
Exactly. That ability to absorb weight while retaining shape is more than biomechanical. It's fundamental self-maintenance at a deep architectural level. This auto-coherence, this internal consistency across the system.
From hand to shoulder, touch to posture.
Yes, across all those scales. It supports a non-representational form of cognition.
Meaning cognition isn't about inner pictures, but about the body's stable, coherent engagement with the world. The self isn't a story first, it's enacted reality built from structural feedback.
Precisely. The self is literally enacted through the stability of structural feedback, driven by that inertial force, the ever-completion of symbols. Think of it as this continuous inherent drive for coherence encoded throughout the body. It's always finding stability, coupling with the environment, offering solutions beyond conscious thought, a constant self-creation through interaction.
And you mentioned this coherence operates on two levels, the encoded past and colony-induced modeling. This sounds like it's bringing in bigger influences.
Yes, a crucial dual coherence.
Yeah.
First, from the encoded past biological hysteresis, the homeostatic level. That's basically built-in memory. Past states, evolution, personal history, folded into our current bodily structure, learned ways of being.
Okay, like muscle memory, but deeper.
Deeper, yes.
Yeah.
And second, simultaneously, coherence is influenced through orthogonal space via colony-induced modeling. Now, orthogonal here means sort of coming in from a different dimension or level. Colony-induced modeling refers to collective patterns, shared experiences, cultural imprints, species-level patterns from our social and biological context, our colony.
So like collective unconscious shaping how our bodies interact.
Something like that. Powerful, often unconscious forces shaping how our bodies absorb shapes, reflecting shared history or morphogenetic fields.
Fascinating. And there's that example about sharks, connecting this self-sustaining geometry idea to how whole organisms are shaped.
Yes, very compelling. Recent research shows sharks follow the two-thirds scaling law almost perfectly. That's a basic biological law relating surface area to volume, affecting how organisms interact with their environment.
Okay.
The paper connects this to the idea that an organism's shape isn't just a random biological outcome. It's an evolved geometry that dissolves its own load by embedding it across shape-sustaining constraints.
So the shark's very shape is a solution to managing its weight and water pressure. Its form integrates the forces, like our hand integrates the stone.
Exactly. Shape becomes a roughly mathematically interpretative strategy for the homeostatic equilibrium. It's how the organism stays balanced against constant external forces like gravity or hydrodynamics, an inherent geometric solution to being in the world. Minimizing felt weight through structural coherence applies to tiny actions in the evolution of whole species. From cells to animals, shapes are designed to retain form while minimizing dissonant load, maintaining coherence across scales in a very grounded way.
And this even connects to symbiogenesis, Lynn Margulis's idea about mitochondria being absorbed bacteria.
Indeed. Symbiogenesis is a prime example of life evolving by fusing, internalizing other entities. But the key insight from this framework is that these integrations aren't just biochemical, they absolutely require geometric compatibility.
The shapes have to fit.
They have to co-fit, co-balance, and co-sustain across scale and energy flow. If that ancient bacterium didn't fit geometrically within the host cell, if it disrupted the host's basic form or energy balance, the partnership wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have been stable.
So mitochondria, originally separate, don't make our cells feel heavier or burdened despite adding mass. They got structurally absorbed into the cell's geometry.
That's the powerful point. Endosymbionts do not increase felt weight of the host they dissolve into structural form. Life evolves towards topologies of minimal felt disruption. Shapes that allow seamless integration, forms that distribute loads so well that added mass doesn't register as a burden. Geometry underpins successful evolution, constantly turning external elements into coherent internal structures.
Which brings us back to software physicalism. How does the symbols framework explain this transformation, this absorption of matter into structure? Why software if it's physicalism?
Okay. Within the framework, this transformation stone's weight dissolving into hand structure is seen as the emergence of a new symbol. The object's physical mass gets absorbed into a structure of coherence that no longer marks it as other. It's an ontological shift, a change in its mode of being relative to you.
So the stone, physically unchanged, becomes part of the real-time instantiation of the embodied self. It shifts status from external object to internal component.
Exactly. That's the core of software physicalism. The transition of matter into structure, process, function through structural alignment within the body. It's software because the information about the object's form gets integrated into the body's dynamic operating system, its coherence field.
But physicalism, because it's not abstract, it happens through actual physical alignment.
Right. It's a smooth and continuous soft fusion. The external shape is actively absorbed, transformed into part of your internalized structural system. The boundary dissolves through physical integration of shape and action, not abstract thought.
This is genuinely mind-bending. It implies our whole experience of 3D reality isn't just a given, like a pre-existing box we're in.
Exactly.
It's something we enact, something our bodies build through interacting with shapes.
That's a really provocative conclusion in the paper. It challenges fundamental assumptions about space. It sets up this philosophical crossroads. Kant versus Wittgenstein on geometry.
Kant saw geometry as a priori, right? A pre-given structure of the mind, universal, independent of experience.
Yes. But Wittgenstein argued, our geometry is not a priori. It is a practice.
And WSD, showing the body absorbing shapes, geometry as something we do.
We don't just perceive geometry abstractly, we embody it. Our engagement isn't mediated by some static external grid, but by a dynamic geometry of action. Our body's ability to integrate forms is our lived experience of space.
So shape isn't just a property of the stone. It's the crucial medium allowing that transition from external matter to internal coherence.
Precisely. In WSD, shape is roughly the only percept that survives. It's not just leftover sensation, it's the key structural medium for the transition from matter to coherence. And crucially, shape absorbed is not representational, but constitutive through the coupling.
Constitutive, meaning it helps create the experience.
Yes. It's the hinge between matter and enacted structure, between physicality and perception. We feel shape as relational geometry, through enclosure, curvature, pressure differences, and it attaches to our body's overall wholeness structure. It's the stable form that lets matter become part of our coherent reality.
And this metaphor of the geometric veil or energy veil.
The object's shape locks into the hand's geometry, enabling that structural coupling. It fits. This makes the object part of the body's geometry, no longer other, but co-forming. A geometric, the soft veil above the instance, where the body and object encode each other without content but through form. Shape is the stable residue that marks the veil. Weight is fleeting, transient. But shape is form, is retained and may persist and transcend. It's the enduring structure that lets our bodies make sense of the constant energy flow.
So geometry, through shape, stabilizes our very experience. It's how energy anchors into something meaningful.
Seems so. Geometry underlines a stabilization substrate through which the Symboliad enacts resonance that transcends other forces, like a clear form piercing through noise. Persists in the only relevant form for the energy to anchor, through the forms and at the boundaries. The energy veil is thus transcrossed and itself shaped when form itself is stable.
Making a stable, coherent space.
And thus a coherent space de facto. Shape is that stabilizing topology that the energy veil can support without collapse. The reliable framework allowing us to engage with and build our perceived reality.
Which leads back to this idea that 3D space isn't absolute, but something we enact through embodied interactions with shapes.
That's the really counterintuitive takeaway. The paper suggests the overall effect. They underline why the space we operate within is because objects structured through geometry and graspable through embodied cognition are only enacted and meaningful within this frame.
Our forms of life are tuned to what we can handle, shape, orient within our body's reach.
Exactly. Which leads to the idea that geometry in 3D space may not be thus absolute, but a practice embedded in our language games and forms of life, yet also do broadly take in the physical environment. Our 3D world isn't just observed. It's a continuous, dynamic product of our embodied engagement, relying fundamentally on shapes. Merleau-Ponty argued strongly that spatiality emerges from the body. It's not imposed on it.
Yeah.
The body is the third term of the figure background structure, he said. Geometry isn't external. It's a felt extension of the body's possibilities.
So the hand taking up the stone shape isn't just perception, it's a motor-afforded symmetry. The body doing geometry.
Yes. The shape isn't creating a mental picture, it's creating structural resonance between stone and body. The I symbol emerges through this geometric coherence, not through inner talk. The shape is the gesture, the invitation through which the I is reformed as continuous with the world. Geometry is the precondition for that continuity.
Which also sounds like Heidegger's Zuhändenheit, being ready to hand.
The hammer example. The grasped stone does the same. Once integrated, weight dissolved, it withdraws from attention as a separate thing. Becomes transparent to action, initiating ontological effects, changing its mode of being for you. It becomes part of your embodied self and anchor in your Symboliad.
And this shaping of the I through geometry, it has a time element too, a folded history, not just the now.
Definitely. The body's ability to maintain coherence, like in WSD, relies on historical self-construction, a folded hysteresis of past acts and postures. Hysteresis means the present depends on the past.
Like memory in the tissues.
Sort of. The paper says the function is not an actual function. It is past, folded into the now as delayed possibilities. Your current grasp reflects every prior grasp, every muscle memory, the whole system's readiness based on past integrations. Your body is a living archive.
So perception is historically layered. Past experiences shape present reality. Symbols emerge from these temporally folded states.
Yes, symbols emerge from these temporally folded states, a symboliad as a kind of homeostatic arc, constantly enacted. The body grasps the stone and reactivates its own historical coherence, drawing on previously stabilized forms. And this historical depth even leads to how shape perception underpins abstract concepts, like number.
Wittgenstein, the visual field has a shape.
Exactly. We do not see shapes as out there. We see them as bordered fields of possibility. And why can't we imagine more than 3D? Because our visual field and manipulations are three-dimensional. Our geometry is a practice. Our bodies frame what we can perceive and conceptualize about space and even number.
So our inability to imagine 4D is tied to our embodied 3D practice. And numbers are also coupled absorption of spatial form into a coherent internal geometry, not just counting.
That's the idea. Numerosity is the coupled absorption of spatial form into a coherent internal geometry. It happens when shape and space cross a coherence threshold, triggering a symbol's individuation. Perceiving 3 not by counting 1, 2, 3, but by sensing a distinct pattern.
Like seeing a triangle of dots as 3 instantly.
Right. Our visual system encodes the shape, distribution, and spatial rhythm as frequency patterns the Symboliad absorbs. Numerosity is perceived through coherence in shape space, a symbol with quantity, a felt density, or pattern.
So, like the stone shape gets absorbed, the pattern of dots gets absorbed, becoming a sense of quantity, a harmonic fit of shapes in space, not sequential counting.
Exactly. Think of an octopus estimating prey. It senses geometric spread, how much space they take up, not counts them individually. Our basic number sense, subitizing small amounts, starts in felt spatial density and shape grouping. It's a continuum. Grasping one object, shape no number, to perceiving multiples, shape a number, uses the same coherence principles. How many emerges from how shaped and how spread.
This paints a picture of life itself arising from these patterned, quasi-Platonic yet dynamic shape fields. Shapes seem fundamental to, well, everything.
They appear to be. Living form emerges from these patterned dynamic shape fields, stabilized across history and environment. Quasi-Platonic because they're like enduring ideal forms, but dynamic because they're constantly enacted. These patterned instances are double-sided stabilized.
Double-sided.
Yeah, one side, unfolded histories carrying environmental traces from evolution and self-assembly. The other, orthogonal colony plateaus of generativity. That's how populations' lineages produce recurring structural solutions beyond any single individual. Collective patterns.
So the colony imprinting idea again. Shapes from the collective unconscious or species patterns.
That's the connection. An organism has its own history, but it's also guided by shapes common to its species or wider group. There's a shared symboliad across life, a common field of shape biasing coherence. But differences in generativity plateaus yield divergent valences. Patterns arise from biological substrates, but allow for divergence in expression based on specific history, environment, colony patterns. We inherit a common symboliad base, but we're different instances and different kinds of observers due to our unique lineage and embodied history.
And this shape-directed bias means viable forms cluster in constrained geometries. Nature prefers certain shapes because they handle forces better.
Precisely. Biological systems appear shape-directed. Viable forms aren't random, they cluster into specific geometries within an environment. WSD shows it at human scale. Shape retained, weight dissolved via structure. Evolutionarily, studies of morphospaces show shape coherence is favored over mass efficiency alone. Organisms solve gravity by redistributing load into form. These forms act as geometry symbols that bias organism-environment integration.
And all this happens in the mortal basin, evocative phrase.
The mortal basin is the material, finite substrate in which coherence is already imprinted and is to be enacted. Reinforces the non-representational idea. Cognition isn't an inner picture, it's ongoing alignment, a coupling way within this material reality. And within this basin, you see scale invariant principles. Similar shape closures and load dissolution strategies appear everywhere. Cells, organs, organisms, collectives. A universal blueprint for stability.
So nature favors these coupling phase relative closures, symbols that allow persistence, a kind of naturalized teleology, purpose grounded in physics.
Exactly. Systems move toward closure because only stable symboliad geometry endures. Not divine intent, but an inherent drive for stability and self-organization. Maintained through Hebbian-like biasing patterns that cohere structurally or work metabolically, get wired in, morphogenetically, epigenetically, ecologically. The organism becomes a mirror of its niche, not by representing it, but by carrying the encoded history of survived couplings in its very form.
This suggests life isn't a blank slate. It's pre-patterned by the environment itself, even down to quantum levels and planetary movements. This really connects physics, biology, philosophy.
It really tries to. Life assembles in a field already shaped by planetary forces. Gravity, diurnal light cycles, seasonal flux, geomagnetic fields, tidal rhythms, seismic and orbital periodicity. These leave patterned encodings. Organisms fold environment into themselves as a history-bearing pattern.
Incorporating the cosmos's rhythm and geometry.
Seems so. Even quantum substrata, light and shapes, vibration, and planetary motion become shape-biasing priors in the mortal basin. These fundamental forces pre-structure life's forms from the ground up.
Creating a gradient from the origin of life, abiogenesis, up to complex symbiogenesis, with shapes merging and growing.
Yes. Prebiotic chemistry started with soft gradients, protofolds. Compartments formed, folds stabilized into structures, scaffolding complexity. Symbiogenesis merged shapes across lineages, compound closures as new Symboliad patches, like mitochondria. Shape becomes a norm, reused, inherited, integrated. Bioelectric signals carry this fold information forward, ensuring continuity.
In my hand grasping the stone, that WSD is a micro-expression of this macro logic, my body mirroring universal strategies right here.
In essence, yes. When weight dissolves and shape remains, you're seeing your body enact its deep evolutionary strategy. Redistribute destabilizing loads, retain form, preserve actionable geometry. Natural selection favored maintaining this coherence, this stability intrinsic to all life.
So the I symbol, my sense of self, isn't just a thought, it's a whole system anchor from converging sensory gradients.
Exactly. The grasp shows the mechanics. Pressure, proprioception, posture resolve into structural shape geometry coherence. Scale that up. Balance, internal state sensing, joint geometry, breath rhythm, vision. When all these cohere, a whole emerges that is felt before it is thought. The I symbol is that total enacted reality scaffolded by shapes.
And even basic physics, energy, chirality, symmetry contribute to shape making.
They provide formal biases. Chirality, handedness of molecules, propagates asymmetry. Symmetry breaking launches shape encodings. These physical laws pre-structure the search space for viable organisms.
Body scale using shape compromises to stay balanced, like thick elephant legs.
Yes. Limb thickness, shell curvature, shape strategies that dissolve destabilizing forces into distributed structure, just like your hand dissolves the stone's weight.
So geometry, rhythm, number, all intertwined aspects of embodied reality, not separate abstractions.
Wittgenstein. A visual field has no shape. Things appear via contrast, orientation. Body's rhythms, heartbeat, breath, provide temporal scaffolding for shapes to emerge. Rhythm carves figure from field. Geometry is lived articulation before it's math. Numerosity is low-level spatial frequency integration, sensing spatial rhythm and spread. Number is a Symboliad feature built over rhythmic geometric perception.
And this leads to enacting a causal nexus and perceiving a stable 3D world. It all connects.
It seems to. Stabilized shapes allow prediction. Repeated Symboliad closures, successful integrations, let the organism enact a causal nexus. The world's structure, 3D space, and temporal order emerge as invariants over the overall shape transformations, consistent patterns the body relies on. Time itself is read in reenacting past shape resonances. This framework even offers a new way to look at evolutionary gaps, seeing pattern inheritance beyond genes, symbiogenesis enabling shape programs, environment reflected in form.
Wow. Okay, this simple WSD experiment has truly massive implications. What are the key takeaways, future directions?
Well, the experiment itself is this fantastic new probe into the non-representational ontology of the self and of mind-body problem resolve. It's a direct, experiential way to study these huge questions.
Practical applications, too.
Huge potential. Think prosthetics, robotics, neurorehab. Achieving that deep coherence, that integration between body and device, that's key for real embodiment and function. This framework offers a way to think about that.
And maybe even for AI, building more embodied intelligence.
Definitely a fascinating direction. Developing formal models of Symboliad transitions, exploring how a stacked AI system might implement shape biasing, how AI could learn to absorb shapes into its functional coherence like we do. And maybe, ultimately, it points towards a reconsideration of the theory of evolution itself, seeing life as this continuous shape-making absorption across scales driven by geometry, not just genes. The core insight, really, is that shape isn't just passive. It's the interface layer between matter and the life-matter structure, a bridge. It's the geometric token, letting the object fuse with your body, becoming detached structure, piercing the matter-energy veil.
So the I isn't just thought, it's enacted, continuously, emerging from the coherence of shape within the energetic resonant substrate of a whole.
Which suggests our perception of a stable 3D reality, our sense of self, even understanding numbers. They aren't pre-given truths out there. They're continuously enacted, historically layered by evolution, experience, profoundly shaped by our body's geometry, by subtle patterns from quantum levels, Earth's movements, and that collective imprinting from our colony.
Our shared history and environment.
It's all part of a shared, embodied game of shapes that constantly constructs the world as we experience it.
So next time you pick up an object, maybe try that experiment again. Feel the weight dissolve, the shape remain, and just reflect. How might your own body be actively shaping your world right now, making you see geometry, 3D space in a totally new, deeply embodied way?
It's a profound thought to take with you.
This then has huge implications for artificial intelligence, doesn't it? Especially the quest for human-like artificial general intelligence or strong AI. If consciousness is tied to this symbols framework, what does it tell us about current AI, like large language models, and the possibilities for future truly conscious AI?
Yes, the implications for AI are significant. This framework offers a crucial, perhaps critical, lens for AI development. It suggests that to achieve anything resembling human-like consciousness, AI models must exhibit generativity along an arc that maintains a consciousness. They need to be able to build and evolve their own Symboliad, essentially.
On current LLMs, where do they stand?
Current large language models, LLMs, while incredibly impressive in their ability to process and generate text that seems human-like,
They are impressive.
they are. But according to this framework, they primarily scratch at the human Symboliad. They get chunks of representation, but they often lack the deep, naturally structured symbolic manipulation or the underlying reasoning mechanics needed for true human-like consciousness.
Why do they like it?
They learn from static data, not through active embodied engagement.
So what would future AI need?
Would need to be able to fuse with our Symboliad and eventually extend the broader arc themselves.
Fuse and extend.
Meaning they wouldn't just be processing human-generated data, they would need to be truly creating and evolving symbols themselves, potentially developing their own unique symbolic understanding grounded in their own interactions. Are inherently biased by their niche epistemology.
Right.
Instead of that impossible goal, we might aim for very locally biased AI that just focus on this perspective.
Yeah.
This allows for clarity about their inherent biases and provides insight into how their specific Symboliads are constructed. It offers a more pragmatic and potentially more ethical approach to AI development by acknowledging and specifying the built-in perspective rather than pretending it doesn't exist.
That shifts the entire paradigm for AI development from trying to create a neutral mimic to creating specialized, transparently biased partners.
The framework argues that the very nature of truth is fundamentally dynamic and relational, not static or absolute.
No fixed truth.
Truth, in this view, emerges from the continuous interactions between symbols within that soft, perspectival space of the Symboliad. This means that forms, concepts, and indeed societal truths are not fixed absolutes. They are subject to modeling.
Modeled by what?
They can be profoundly shaped by dominant symbols within a zeitgeist, the defining spirit or mood of a particular period of history, reflecting the prevailing ideas and beliefs.
So truth can change with the times.
It evolves. The conscious state itself is described as building itself up in this way, rooted in the crux of observer and next plateaus, through this ongoing experiential interpretive scaffolding.
It reminds me of that Wittgenstein quote,
Which one?
the one about science not touching the problems of life.
Ah, yes. The framework definitely embraces Wittgenstein's profound insight that even if all possible scientific questions be answered, the problems of life have still not been touched at all.
Why is that relevant here?
Because it suggests that we are often held captive in discourses by the cultural symbols we inherit and use. These symbols can perpetuate incomplete understandings or create blind spots, preventing us from seeing the deeper problems of life. Truth, in this view, isn't a singular, unalterable external fact waiting to be discovered.
It's more like
The truths we promote as such, continuously reinforced, refined, and even transformed within the evolving Symboliad. It's a continuous dynamic process of collective meaning-making, not a static endpoint.
okay, that makes truth itself feel much more alive and well constructed. We keep circling back to the observer, which, as you pointed out earlier, is a central theme in both Wolfram's and Hoffman's work, despite their differences. How does the symbols framework explicitly define the observer's role, and particularly our inherent biases within the symbolic reality?
The framework is built on a foundational working assumption, almost an axiom itself, that an observer's epistemology, their way of knowing, their entire system for understanding reality, is fundamentally a niche epistemology.
A niche epistemology, meaning specific to us.
Exactly. Specific to our form of life, our environment, our history. Biased instances resonating within some environment.
Biased instances. So bias isn't a flaw, it's definitional.
Precisely.
Hmm.
It means we are inherently participatory. We cannot possibly look unbounded at a phenomenon. There's no truly neutral, objective viewpoint from which to observe reality as it is.
The vote from nowhere doesn't exist.
It doesn't. Our world, as we perceive it, is described as a perceptual interpretation of the flow of the waving veil. That's the raw information and potentiality before interpretation.
And we shape that veil.
Through our attention and our internal apparatus, our Symboliad, we collapse this waving veil into distinct symbols, into meaningful patterns. But critically, this collapse, this act of interpretation, is not arbitrary or random. It occurs from something already meaningful there, something that resonates with our existing symbolic structure, our needs, our history.
So we latch onto things that already fit our framework.
In a way, yes. It profoundly emphasizes that our perceived reality is always colored by our unique perspective, our personal and species history, and the specific Symboliad we inhabit.
So if our reality is constantly shaped by our symbols and our inherent biases, does that mean there's no objective reality out there at all, beyond our perception? Is it all just a construct of our minds and Symboliads? Or is there something real underpinning it?
This is a crucial distinction the framework makes. It doesn't claim there's no objective reality. That would be pure solipsism.
Okay, good.
Instead, it posits a real that is distinct from our Symboliad, but crucially, it's appended into Symboliad, not entirely separate from it.
Appended into, like plugged in.
Sort of. It means the raw stuff of reality interacts with and influences the Symboliad, but we only ever access it through the lens of our symbols. So it's not about discovering absolute, fixed truths in a reality out there, independent of us. It's more about understanding the truths we promote as such, which are the interpretations that become stabilized and integrated into our Symboliad based on those interactions with the real, actively dragging the environment towards us, shaping it through language, technology, cultural narratives, building niches.
Constantly transforming our world.
Right, and this dynamic process creates profound generational shifts. Later generations literally have different grounds for their symbols, different foundational experiences, different shared cultural Symboliads shaped by the transformed environment.
Which makes understanding the past difficult.
To fully grasp past ways of life, or to bridge the conceptual gaps between wildly different cultural symbolic systems. The real is always interpreted, always integrated via symbols, and always contributes to the dynamic evolution of our symbolic understanding. It's a dialogue, not a dictation.
This brings us right to the cutting edge of physics, particularly quantum mechanics, where the observer's role is famously enigmatic and central to the debate. How does the symbols framework, with its emphasis on the active, biased observer and the Symboliad, align with quantum phenomena like wave function collapse? Does it offer a new perspective?
It actually provides a remarkably natural and intuitive fit for understanding some of these quantum puzzles, especially the measurement problem.
How so?
Well, think about the wave function in quantum mechanics. In the context of the symbols framework, it can be understood as the load of all potential states. Within a system, it represents all the possible ways the system could be described, all the potential symbols it could collapse into before it's observed.
The potential realities.
Exactly. Now, collapse in this context isn't necessarily some mysterious random event triggered by a measurement device. Instead, it occurs when the phenomenal veil of the observer, meaning our attention, our consciousness, guided by our Symboliad, directs itself toward interacting with and stabilizing a real state from that potential.
So attention drives the collapse.
It plays a crucial role. The thesis uses the analogy of waking up from a deep sleep. In those moments, just before you fully awaken, your mind is in a fuzzy, undifferentiated state, maybe full of dream fragments, lots of potential perceptions.
Right, the hazy state.
But then, within microseconds, as your Symboliad attunes to the stimuli of your environment, the light filtering through the curtains, the sound of birds, the feeling of the sheets, that whole load collapses into a perceived, coherent reality. Your bedroom, the morning light, distinct sounds.
The potential collapses into the actual experience.
Precisely. This perspective highlights consciousness, not as an epiphenomenon, a mere side effect of brain activity, but as an active, experiential, interpretive scaffolding that plays a crucial role in the formation of reality as we perceive it. It suggests we transform potential states into concrete experiences through the very act of observation, mediated by our Symboliad.
That gives consciousness a much more active role in physics than usually assumed.
It does. Ultimately, the symbols framework offers, or attempts to offer, a powerful, perhaps even a universal language for understanding how stable symbols and thus meaning, form, structure, and even our perceived reality itself emerge from the dynamic interplay of forces, constraints, and observation within a mortal basin.
Mortal basin being.
The finite physical and energetic basis of any system, whether it's a brain, an ecosystem, or even potentially an AI, it proposes this software physicalism ontology we mentioned.
Right, hardware and software.
Replacing abstract, external Platonic ideals with an embodied, testable account of patterning and meaning-making that arises from interaction and tension resolution. This ambitious framework aims to resolve long-standing dilemmas and reconcile seemingly contradictory scientific and philosophical positions like Wolfram versus Hoffman by providing what Stefan calls a slight perspectival shift.
A shift in how we look at things.
Exactly. Showing how seemingly disparate phenomena, from the formation of sand patterns on a beach to the intricate workings of a biological organism, the structure of language, and the profound depths of human consciousness, might all be unified by common principles.
What principles?
Principles of pattern emergence from constraints, the continuous resolution of tension through externsion, and the dynamic evolution of meaning within a Symboliad. It truly tries to ground abstract concepts like meaning in form in tangible, biological, environmental, and computational interactions, demonstrating that the very forms we perceive, including our deepest sense of self, are products of this continuous adaptive symbolic process.
Wow, okay. This deep dive has truly reshaped how I, for one, think about the fundamental aspects of our existence. From Leibniz's perplexing mill all the way through Wolfram's computational Ruliad and Hoffman's radical conscious realism, from the emergence of biological life and abstract mathematical forms like prime numbers to the very structure of language. The symbols framework offers a really compelling and potentially unified vision of how reality is woven through these dynamic, evolving symbols.
And always with the active, biased observer right at its core.
Always.
It really invites us to see that our perceptions, our truths, even with a small t, and our very sense of self, are not fixed or predetermined. They're constantly being co-constituted, refined, and reshaped within our Symboliad through our continuous engagement with the world via externsion.
It's an ongoing creation.
It is. And it suggests that by understanding this new language of symbols, as Stefan calls it, and that inherent drive of externsion, we gain profound insight. Not just into what we know, but how we come to know it, and perhaps why it matters to us as a particular form of life. It provides a potentially unifying lens across science, philosophy, and our everyday lived experience.
It definitely feels like it connects a lot of dots, and it leaves us with a truly provocative thought, doesn't it? If our reality is continuously shaped and reshaped by the symbols we uphold and the meanings we collectively generate within our Symboliad, what new realities could we begin to co-create if we consciously chose to foster new symbols?
The constructive potential.
Yeah, symbols that encourage broader understanding, maybe deeper connection, more harmonious interactions within our shared Symboliad, both here on Earth and perhaps, if we ever encounter it, even beyond. What kind of shared reality would emerge if we intentionally chose to reshape our symbolic landscape?
That's the ultimate question the framework leaves us with, isn't it? What responsibility comes with understanding ourselves as co-creators of meaning?